Alright, listen up now. So I need y'all to sit down for this one, because I've been sitting on this piece of paper for a minute, and once I show it to you, you are not going to hear Drake and Kendrick Lamar the same way ever again. I'm not joking with y'all. This changes the story. Because everybody, and I do mean everybody, watched Drake and Kendrick Lamar go to war back in 2024 like it was two grown men in an alley with nothing between them but pride. Diss track after diss track after diss track. Streams breaking. Records shattering. The whole internet lost its mind. And people picked their sides like it was the Super Bowl, honey. Team Drake or Team Kendrick. No in between. No peace treaty. No calm heads. And I sat back and I watched it just like you did. But then I saw something. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So pull this up with me right now. Because the war you thought you were watching between Drake and Kendrick Lamar was never a war. It was a family fight. And the person collecting the check at the end of every single round was not Drake, and it was not Kendrick Lamar. It was somebody sitting way above both of them that nobody was talking about. And when I tell y'all the receipts on this are wild, I need you to trust me. Let me walk you through it piece by piece. Now check this out. In 2024, we all watched what everybody in the culture called the biggest rap beef in a generation. Two of the most important rappers alive going bar for bar, blow for blow. Drake dropped. Then Kendrick Lamar dropped. Then Drake dropped again. Then Kendrick Lamar dropped again. And then they kept dropping, back to back to back to back, like neither one of them slept for a week. And the numbers were absolutely insane. The songs Drake and Kendrick Lamar used to attack each other became some of the biggest streams of the whole year. Old albums came back to life. Older projects climbed the charts like it was 2015 all over again. Every single playlist, every single radio station, every single blog, every single timeline was saturated with these two names for weeks straight. If you were in the room, you know what I'm talking about. Now, everybody was so busy screaming for their side that nobody stopped to ask the one question that actually matters when this much money is moving around at once. Where did all the money actually go? Because when two grown superstars start a war, and the war generates that many streams, honey, that money has to land somewhere. And the answer nobody wanted to hear is where we're heading tonight. So peep this. When Drake first popped in this industry, he was not the owner of anything at all. He signed with Cash Money Records back in 2009, and Cash Money was under the Universal Music Group umbrella. That was the Lil Wayne label. And in that first deal, like most first deals in this business, the young star from Toronto did not own his master recordings. The label did. Now I want you to sit with that for a second, because when we talk about the Toronto boy today, everybody acts like the OVO boss has always been a mogul, always been an owner, always been calling every shot. That is not the truth. He was a signed artist just like everybody else in that first phase. What changed everything is that he blew up bigger and faster than almost anybody in the modern era. According to Variety, he moved tens of millions of albums and became the first artist ever to cross 50 billion streams on a single platform. 50 billion, y'all. That is not a real number. That is a number that scares record labels straight. And when a label gets scared of losing you, that is exactly when the leverage shifts in your direction. Now here's what I'll give the Toronto man about that moment. He used the leverage. There was an executive named Steve Stout who reportedly said out loud, and I'm paraphrasing here, that if he ever decided to walk away from the majors and go independent, the whole music business would be over. Think about the size of that statement for a second. That is not something people say about most artists. That is something people say about a person who is holding the entire roof up. So he turned around and restructured everything. Around 2018, when his original Cash Money era was wrapping up, he stopped being a traditional signed artist and started operating through his own company, OVO Sound. And OVO Sound signed what they call an exclusive licensing arrangement with Republic Records, which is a division of Universal Music Group. Now that one word, licensing, is where the whole story turns on its head. Let me break this down like your auntie explaining a lease. In an old school record deal, the label owns your music forever. They finance it, they release it, they collect on it, and if you fall out with them, they still own everything you ever made under that paper. In a licensing deal at the Toronto Boys level, the artist owns the underlying music. The OVO boss owns the masters. He owns the songs. He owns the copyrights. And he just rents out the label's distribution machine for a set number of years in exchange for their marketing muscle and a giant check up front. That is a totally different animal. Then in 2022, the Toronto man made it official and enormous. According to Variety and other outlets, he signed a new agreement with Universal Music Group reported to be worth around $400 million. $400 million, y'all. That deal covered recorded music, publishing, film, television, and brand ventures. It is one of the richest deals this industry has ever put on paper. So when people tell you today that he owns his masters, That is broadly true for the modern chapter of his career. He owns the work. The Toronto boy rents the pipeline. Hold that idea in your head, because when we walk over to he, you're going to see something you were not expecting at all. Now, in the fan's imagination, the Compton man is the total opposite of the OVO boss. Where he is the hit machine, K. is the purist. Where he is the mogul, he is the artist. And in terms of vibe and temperament, sure, I will absolutely give you that. He carries himself different. He talks about the business different. The Compton boy has always been sold to us as the independent one, the pure one, the one who never bent to the machine. But when you actually look at the paperwork, honey, the paperwork tells a different story. For most of his career, he was the flagship artist on Top Dog Entertainment, known in the streets and in the industry as TD. TD is an independent label out of California. But here is the piece nobody says out loud in the culture. TD distributed its music through Interscope Records. And Interscope Records, just like Republic, is a division of Universal Music Group. So even in the TD era, the road that his music traveled to reach your ears ran through the exact same building that the Toronto man's music was going through. Then around 2022, he moved on from that setup entirely. He had already co-founded a company with his creative partner Dave Free called pgLang. And listen carefully to me now, because this is the piece the mythology of the Compton man tries to skip right past. pgLang is not a traditional record label. pgLang is described as a multidisciplinary company that covers music, film, television, and other creative work. It is K.'s own operation. And in that sense, yes, he is very much an owner. But the actual music, the actual recordings that come out under his name, still reaches you through a licensing relationship with Interscope. And Interscope, one more time for the people in the back, is a division of Universal Music Group. So watch what happens when you strip away all the branding and put he and he on the same page. He owns his work through OVO Sound and licenses out to Republic. The Compton boy owns his work through pgLang and licenses out to Interscope. Neither one of them is a fully signed artist who surrendered his catalog forever. And neither one of them is a fully independent operator who controls his own pipeline top to bottom. Both of them, the same setup, wearing different labels on the outside. And this is not just a he and he situation either. According to industry reporting from outlets like Trapital, this is now the standard structure for the biggest artists in the whole game. J. Cole runs a version of this. Future runs a version of this. Rick Ross runs a version of this. Nicki Minaj has run a version of this. The terms and the majors change from artist to artist, but the shape of the deal is identical every time. On the songs, license the machine that delivers them. Take a giant advance. Split the upside. Move on. Now here's where it gets crazy, and this is the part one need you to sit with, because this is the part nobody in the entire feud discourse would say out loud in public. Republic Records is a division of Universal Music Group. Interscope Records is a division of Universal Music Group. The Toronto boy distributes through Universal. He distributes through Universal. The two men who spent all of 2024 attacking each other on record in front of the entire planet, in front of every award show, in front of every talk show, in front of every timeline on Earth, are, at the corporate level, sleeping under the exact same roof. Same parent company, same chairman, same set of quarterly earnings, different bedrooms, same landlord. And that parent, Universal Music Group, is not some small operation. Universal is the biggest of the three global music companies on the planet. Universal controls a catalog of around 3 million sound recordings. Universal has a commanding share of the world's recorded music revenue. And Universal is led by a chairman named Lucian Grainge, who has been running the machine at the top of the entire industry for over a decade now. Now think about what that actually means on the ground. When the OVO boss released a song aimed at he, streams went up on both sides. And a company called Universal collected on both sides. When the Compton man clapped back with his own record, streams went up on both sides again. And the same company, Universal, collected on both sides again. Every single blow that landed between he and K. in 2024, every single viral moment, every single record broken, every single first week number, flowed upward into the exact same bank account at the very top of the pyramid. The fans experienced it as a war between two men. But if you looked at Universal's balance sheet during that same window, honey, it was the best quarter of the year. Two of the biggest artists of the decade going at each other's throats and driving record-breaking engagement on the same corporate parents' platforms. That is not a war at all. That is a house divided, owned entirely by the same landlord, and the landlord is smiling all the way to the bank. And here is the part that flips the entire scoreboard upside down. The biggest financial winner of the whole he and he rivalry of 2024 was almost certainly neither the Toronto man nor he. The biggest winner was Universal Music Group. Let me say that again slowly so you can absorb it properly. The biggest single winner of that entire war was not he. It was not the Compton boy. It was the corporate parent that owned both of their pipelines the whole time. Universal collected on his spiking streams. Universal collected on his spiking streams. Universal collected on both men's back catalog spikes as brand new listeners went digging into their older projects to catch up on the story. One of the defining tracks of the beef became one of the biggest songs of the entire year, and it was distributed by Universal's own Interscope. Whatever the personal cost of this feud to he as human beings, as artists, as people with families and reputations, the corporate parent monetized the entire spectacle from a position so high up in the sky that no diss track ever written could reach it. And this is the oldest game in business, honey. When two competitors go to war inside the same marketplace, and one company owns the marketplace itself, the owner of the marketplace always wins. Every single time. It does not matter who lands the harder punch. It does not matter who the internet crowns the winner. It does not matter which fan base screams the loudest at the award show. The house wins, because the house is the ground the fight is being fought on. That is the rule of every rivalry in every industry going all the way back to before hip-hop was even a genre. That is how the wrestling business works. That is how the boxing business works. That is how the fashion business works. And that is exactly how the modern music business works too. Now here's what I want to give you, because this is where it stops being about the Toronto boy, and he specifically, and starts being about the whole industry as a system. The mythology in music has always been that the goal for an artist is to own your masters. And once you own your masters, you have won. You are free. You are in control. You are unbeatable. And the OVO boss and the Compton man rivalry prove that this myth is only half the story. Because both of these men did the smart thing on that front. Both of them fought to keep the ownership of their underlying rights. Both of them avoided the trap that swallowed so many artists before them. Artists who signed one bad deal in their 20s and spent the rest of their lives fighting to get their own songs back. He got out of that trap. K-Dot got out of that trap. But keeping the songs, it turns out, is only one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is the pipeline. And that side, neither he nor he owns even one single inch of. This is the evolution the major labels quietly pulled off in the last 20 years, and I have to give it to them. It is diabolical from their side of the table. In the old days, the majors owned your masters, and that is how they controlled you top to bottom. Artists spent decades fighting that model, and the smartest ones eventually won the right to keep their rights. So the majors adapted. They said, fine, keep your masters, we do not even need them anymore. What we need is to own the distribution and marketing machine that turns those masters into money. And on every single stream, every single sale, every single license, every single sync, every single tour cross-promo, we take our percentage before the artist sees a single dime. The artist owns the song. The label owns the road the song travels on to reach the ears of the fans. And the toll on the road is exactly where the real money lives. Not in the ownership of the recording. In the ownership of the highway. That right there is the truth about the Toronto man and he beef. It is not a feud at all. It is a shared dependency. Two men who own their work, both renting the same delivery truck from the same landlord, and both calling themselves independent while writing rent checks to the same address every quarter. And this pattern, this exact difference between owning the work and owning the pipeline, is the pattern that separates artists who build durable generational wealth from artists who lose it all in a single bad headline cycle. Now peep this connection, because it is bigger than just he and the Compton boy. Prince understood this exact lesson decades before either of them was even on the radar. Prince did not just fight to own his masters. Prince built his own record label from scratch. Prince built his own direct-to-fan distribution back before the internet was ready for it. Prince walked around with the word slave written on his cheek to make the point loud and clear to everybody in the industry. Prince understood that owning the recording meant absolutely nothing if somebody else controlled how the recording reached the world. Prince was chasing the pipeline. Prince was not just chasing the asset. Then look at Jay-Z, who took the logic even further than that. Jay-Z bought entire operating businesses that he could control from top to bottom. A champagne brand, a cognac line, an entertainment agency, a streaming platform, honey. Jay-Z did not want to rent anybody's machine ever again. Jay-Z wanted to own the whole factory, top to bottom, loading dock to loading dock. And then look at Kanye West, who is the cautionary tale on the other side of this whole conversation. Kanye had a name that was worth billions on paper, but Kanye did not own the manufacturing engine or the distribution engine behind the products his name was actually attached to. And when the corporate partners walked away, that fortune collapsed almost overnight. Kanye owned the brand. Kanye did not own the pipeline. And that is exactly why the pipeline is the whole ballgame in this new era. Prince fought for both sides of the equation. Jay-Z bought both sides of the equation. Kanye had one side and lost everything else. He have mastered the first side, ownership of their rights, and they are still renting the second side from the same corporation up top. They are more free than the artists who came before them. But he are not as free as the mythology of hip-hop wants to sell you at the streaming service checkout page. And Universal, the company sitting above both of them, knows it with absolute certainty. That is exactly why Universal can afford to house the Toronto boy and he side by side and let them go to war on each other on record, because no matter which side of the battle wins the round, Universal wins the entire war. Now, there is one more piece I need to bring to you tonight, and this is the receipt that ties the whole story together with a bow on it. The fallout from the OVO boss and the Compton man feud eventually spilled out of the music world and into the courtroom. He filed a defamation lawsuit against Universal itself, related to how the label promoted one of the tracks from the beef. Universal called that lawsuit meritless in public. That case is still working its way through the process, so I am not here tonight to speculate on who is right and who is wrong in that particular legal fight. That is not the point I am making. The point is the structure of what happened. When he wanted to fight back over the business conduct around this feud, the party he ended up in a legal dispute with was not K. The party the Toronto man ended up in a legal dispute with was the parent company that distributes them both. Read that sentence one more time. He did not sue Kendrick Lamar. He sued the landlord. Because at the end of the day, Drake and Kendrick Lamar and every other superstar sitting in this modern setup all know exactly who is sitting at the top of the pyramid. And it is not the guy holding the microphone in the booth. Now, here is where I need to hear from y'all in the comments, because this one is going to spark some real conversation and I want to know where you stand tonight. First question for you. When you watch the Drake and Kendrick Lamar feud back in your head, knowing what you know now, does it change how you saw the whole moment? Does it feel less like a war between two grown men and more like a wrestling match between two employees of the same corporation? Or do you still see it the way you saw it back then? Real, personal, no corporate hand on the scale at all? Second question. Which side of the model do you actually respect more? The Drake model, where you play the machine, you take the giant check, you keep your rights, and you keep it moving? Or the Kendrick Lamar model, where you build your own creative company on the outside and you license the distribution back in? Or do you honestly think that at the end of the day, both models are the same thing wearing different clothes to the club? And the third question, the one that matters the most to me. Do you think there is any real path in modern music for a superstar at Drake's level or Kendrick Lamar's level to actually own the pipeline too, the way Jay-Z built it with Roc Nation and the way Prince tried to build it with MPG? Or do you think that road is closed forever now, and the majors have locked the door on both sides of the industry? Drop it down below and tell me where you land, because I know y'all are going to have opinions, and I want to read every single one of them. Now, on top of all of that, let me put one more thing on your plate to chew on tonight. This entire story of Drake and Kendrick Lamar is not just a rap beef story. It is a Universal Music Group story. It is a Republic Records story. It is an Interscope Records story. It is a Lucian Grainge story. It is a story about how the biggest media companies on earth learned to profit from the very conflicts they used to try to suppress at every turn. Because there was a time, and old heads in the game will remember this clearly, when major labels went out of their way to prevent public beefs between their own artists. It was bad for business. It made the artist look small. It made the label look messy on the front page of the papers. And now, in the streaming era, the same labels are quietly discovering the opposite is true. Beef sells. Beef streams. Beef breaks records. Beef trends. Beef fills the algorithm. Beef sells t-shirts. Beef sells tour tickets. Beef sells everything downstream too. And if you can house both sides of the beef under the same roof, honey, you win coming and going for the whole cycle. That is the actual lesson underneath the Drake and Kendrick Lamar feud. Not who spit harder. Not who won on Genius Annotations. Not who got the meme. The lesson is that the modern major label figured out how to turn its own artists' worst moments into its very best quarters. And Drake and Kendrick Lamar, whether they meant to or not, delivered one of the biggest quarters in Universal's recent memory as a company. Now here is what I will give both Drake and Kendrick Lamar about all of this, because I do not want anybody in my comments telling me I am hating on either one of these men tonight. Drake did not do anything wrong by structuring his career this way. Kendrick Lamar did not do anything wrong by structuring his career this way either. Both of them did what the smartest artists in this business have learned to do to survive at the top of the mountain. Both of them kept the ownership of their work in a way most artists never even get close to. Both of them fought to control the parts of their careers they could control. Both of them took the giant advances and put themselves and their teams in position to eat well for the rest of their lives and their children's lives too. If you are an artist trying to build wealth in music today, the setup Drake and Kendrick Lamar have is one of the smartest possible plays on the board right now. This is not a hit piece on Drake. This is not a hit piece on Kendrick Lamar. This is a hit piece on the myth that Drake and Kendrick Lamar were ever independent from each other in the way we all wanted to believe they were. Because when you look at it clearly, when you look at it the way an accountant looks at a balance sheet, when you look at it the way somebody reading the fine print of a contract looks at a term sheet, this whole rivalry between Drake and Kendrick Lamar was never at war in the way the culture said it was. They were two very successful tenants of the same building throwing furniture at each other in the hallway while the landlord counted the deposit checks in the office downstairs. And the culture did not want to hear that in 2024 because the culture needed the beef to be real. The culture needed a clear winner and a clear loser. The culture needed the highlight reel to run all summer long. The culture needed the tribalism to pick a team. And there is nothing wrong at all with the culture wanting that. Music is supposed to give you drama. Music is supposed to give you sides. Music is supposed to give you a reason to argue with your cousins at the family barbecue. But when the smoke cleared and the tracks stopped dropping and the streams settled back down to normal levels, the real story was hiding in the paperwork the whole entire time. And this is that story tonight. Now let me tell you why this matters going forward from tonight. Because this is not the last time you are going to see this exact pattern play out on your timeline. There will be another beef the size of Drake and Kendrick Lamar. Maybe it will be two rappers we have never even heard of yet. Maybe it will be two pop stars. Maybe it will be two country artists we already know. Maybe it will be two Afrobeats artists on the same label group we do not even fully know about yet. And when it happens, the first question you should ask yourself before you pick a side is not who is right and who is wrong in the words. The first question you should ask yourself is who distributes them. Who owns the pipeline the fight is running through? Who is collecting on every round no matter which one of the two artists wins the culture war? Because in the modern music business, the person holding the microphone and the person holding the money are almost never the same person anymore. And the fight you are watching on your timeline is almost always way less independent than it actually looks from the cheap seats. That is the real story of the Drake and Kendrick Lamar rivalry. Not who won, not who lost, not who dropped the bigger track, not who had the better verse, but who quietly collected on every single stream from both sides of the war and never had to write a single bar or record a single vocal to earn that check. If tonight taught y'all anything, let it be this. The next time two of your favorite artists go at each other's throats and you feel yourself picking a team, take one deep breath and pull up the paperwork first. Because you cannot pick a winner in a fight where both fighters are getting paid by the same coach in the corner. And that is exactly what Drake and Kendrick Lamar showed the whole world in 2024, even if the world was too loud and too busy picking sides to notice it in real time. Now listen, I know some of y'all are going to say I am reading way too deep into this. I know some of y'all are going to say Drake and Kendrick Lamar hate each other on a personal level and the corporate stuff does not matter at all in the real world. I know some of y'all are going to say the beef was real, the wounds were real, the words were real. And you know what? Maybe you are absolutely right about that. Maybe the hate between Drake and Kendrick Lamar was as real as anything hip-hop has ever produced in its whole history. I am not here tonight to tell you what these two men feel about each other in their private hearts. I am not in Drake's group chat. I am not in Kendrick Lamar's group chat either. I am not on either one of their FaceTime calls at 3 a.m. But I am here to tell you what the paperwork says. And the paperwork says that no matter how real the beef between Drake and Kendrick Lamar felt to the two of them, and no matter how real it felt to us as fans on the outside, the money from that beef flowed to the same place at the top of the corporate ladder. And that is the piece the culture did not want to hear back then. And that is the piece I had to bring to you tonight on this channel. And let me be clear about one more thing before we wrap this up tonight. This does not make either Drake or Kendrick Lamar a fake in any way. This does not make the music any less good. Some of the greatest music of the last decade came out of this exact structure. Drake has made some of the most memorable songs of a whole generation under this setup. Kendrick Lamar has made some of the most acclaimed albums of the century under this setup. The setup does not ruin the art. The setup does not fake the art. The setup just decides where the money from the art lands at the end of every quarter. And once you understand where the money lands, you understand who really has the power in the room. That is the whole point of this breakdown tonight. The art is real. The rivalry, on some level, is real. But the independence, the way we imagine it, the way the culture packaged it and sold it back to us, is only half real at best. And knowing that half changes everything about how you watch the next one. Now let me hit y'all with one more layer on top of all of this, because I know somebody in the comments is going to ask me about publishing, and publishing is a whole separate beast from the recording side. Because when we talk about Drake and Kendrick Lamar owning their masters, we are only talking about one half of the copyright pie. There is the recording copyright, which is the actual sound of the song, and then there is the composition copyright, which is the words and the melody and the underlying song itself. Every artist has to make deals on both sides of that pie. And on the publishing side, the majors have their own machines too. Universal Music Publishing Group is the publishing arm of the same Universal that owns Republic and Interscope. So when Drake writes a hit song and it gets synced into a movie, into a TV show, into a car commercial, into a video game, the check for that sync goes through the publishing pipeline too. And guess who has a seat at that table on the publishing side? That is right, the same corporate family. So even the copyright half that a lot of artists think they fully control has a universal fingerprint on it in the modern deal structure. That is how deep the pipeline goes. That is how many toll booths sit on the road between the studio and your headphones. Now peep this one detail that most people slide right past, because it tells you where the real power sits. In the streaming era, the label does not just take a cut of what the artist earns. The label often takes a cut of what the platform earns on top of that, through equity stakes and preferred deals baked into the platform relationships. When you stream one of these records on your favorite service, the money is getting split 3, 4, sometimes 5 different ways before the artist ever sees a single cent from the play. The service takes its cut. The label takes its cut. The publisher takes its cut. The producer's split comes off the top. The featured artist gets a slice. And then, way down the ladder, whatever is left over lands in the artist's own account. When people talk about how streaming underpays artists, they usually blame the platform. But the truth is a whole lot messier than that. The platform is just one of many hands in the pot, and the biggest hand in the pot, on almost every stream, is the same major label that everybody wanted to leave behind in the first place. That is why the pipeline conversation is so important. The pipeline is not just distribution anymore. The pipeline is the entire chain of custody the song has to travel through to become money in somebody's account. And every link in that chain is somebody else's toll booth. And listen, I also want to talk about the touring side of this real quick, because a lot of y'all are going to say, but B, artists make most of their money on the road anyway now. And you are right about that. But guess who has been quietly buying up equity in the biggest touring companies and the biggest ticketing platforms in the last few years? Guess who has been building strategic relationships with the promoters that book the arenas? Guess who has been getting a seat at the table on every downstream revenue stream Drake and Kendrick Lamar rely on to eat outside of streaming? It is not always the same Universal by name, but it is almost always somebody in the same tier of the industry. The point is this. The touring side is not the loophole the internet thinks it is. The pipeline runs everywhere. You just have to know where to look for it. So look, if this kind of breakdown is the kind of breakdown you want more of, the kind where we skip the noise and go straight to the paperwork on the biggest names in the business, then you already know exactly what to do. Subscribe on your way out of this video. Turn on the notifications so you catch the next one the second it lands on the channel. And drop me a comment with the celebrity or the company you want me to run this exact same X-ray on next. Because I have a whole stack of these ready to go for y'all. We can do it with the Beyonce and Jay-Z empire and see how their pipeline actually runs. We can do it with the Rihanna-Finney structure and figure out who really owns what in that operation. We can do it with the Taylor Swift re-recording playbook and see who benefits from the ownership shuffle. We can do it with the Kanye West collapse and see where the pipeline broke first. We can do it with the Diddy business unraveling in real time and see which pieces are surviving and which pieces are not. Tell me who you want to see under the microscope next, and I will bring you the full paperwork breakdown just like this one. No shortcuts, no filler, no fluff, just the receipts on the desk. And listen, one last thing I have to put on the table before we wrap. Every once in a while I hear people say, well, if the label sits above everybody, why do artists even bother signing at all? Why not just upload it to the internet yourself and cut the whole middleman out? And I hear you. On paper, that sounds beautiful. In practice, honey, the majors are not just distribution. The majors are radio relationships. The majors are playlist relationships. The majors are late-night TV bookings. The majors are award show politics. The majors are stadium promoter connections. The majors are international rollout teams in 50 different countries. The majors are the reason a song that pops in Atlanta on Monday can be playing in a nightclub in Tokyo by Friday. Nobody has ever built a shadow version of that machine that works at the very top level. Not yet, anyway. Maybe one day some tech company will crack it. But for right now, in this moment we are living in, the majors still control that entire delivery infrastructure. And that is why even the smartest artists in the game keep signing back into that same pipeline year after year, deal after deal. Not because they love the majors, Because there is no other machine on earth that can move a record that fast, that wide, that hard. At the end of the day, Drake and Kendrick Lamar gave us one of the greatest rivalries in modern music history, and I want to be very clear that I am grateful they gave us that moment. Both Drake and Kendrick Lamar fought for their independence in a way that most artists never even get the chance to fight for in their whole careers. Drake owns his work in a way that would have been completely unthinkable in the old model of this business. Kendrick Lamar owns his work in a way that would have been completely unthinkable in the old model of this business. But the machine that carried the work of Drake and Kendrick Lamar to the world, the machine that turned their voices into streams and their streams into checks, the machine that put their faces on every billboard from LA to London to Lagos, that machine belonged to neither Drake nor Kendrick Lamar at any point during the fight. That machine belonged to the same company it always has, sitting quiet at the top of the whole industry. Two enemies, one owner. In a music business where more than ever before, the real power is not in who makes the record. The real power is in who controls the road the record travels on to reach you on your phone in the morning. That is the tea I got for y'all tonight, and I'll catch you on the very next one.